Senator Sasse.
Thank you, Chairman. Director, thanks for being here, and thanks for your forthright manner thus far in the hearing. I'd like to ask some questions related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. Epstein obviously was a wealthy financier who ran a global sex trafficking ring that preyed on scores and scores of young women, and he and his cronies committed some of the most repugnant crimes imaginable against these young women, and yet he was allowed to die in the Bureau's custody despite being a known suicide risk. He deprived, or the failures of the Bureau in that apparent suicide deprived not only all these young women of having their day in court and justice to be done and meted out in a public way, the way we do in this country, but in addition, he took with him to his grave all of the additional evidence he had against many of his co-conspirators. And so I'd like to ask, can you think of any case that approaches the Epstein case in terms of a crisis of public trust for the BOP? Is there any case that rivals it?
No, Senator, I can't think of one.
So we're agreed. Thank you for that answer. We've had directors of the BOP in the past who gave long-winded, meandering answers, so they didn't have to acknowledge that we needed to have more resources focused in this case. Obviously, it's the most basic duty of the BOP to keep prisoners alive. So I guess as a strategic management matter, does every prisoner merit equal treatment, or do some inmates, such as those at the center of a sex trafficking ring where there's lots of evidence that hasn't yet been gathered against other conspirators, do some prisoners merit special attention and special measures to make sure that their life isn't at risk?
Well, Senator, first off, I'd like to say that we certainly treat people fairly, but all of our inmates, the cases like you described there, we apply the appropriate amount of security needs, things like that. So they're all special cases. Without getting into specifics, which I don't think would be appropriate about how we do certain things for certain inmates, the simple answer is that's part of our job to assess that and to apply the appropriate amount of supervision and security. And if it requires more in some cases, then we should be doing that. If it doesn't, we should know. That's in essence what we do.
So thank you. Can you give us a top line on what went wrong in this case? I recognize that we have two guards who are about to go to trial in the case, so I understand that there's an ongoing investigation, but we're also over a year into this investigation, and past directors of the Bureau haven't given this committee any adequate answers. I mean, just bureaucratic nonsense. We're well over a year into the investigation. So what can you tell us about what went wrong?
Well, Senator, you're probably not going to like my answer, but it's a statement, it's a fact that I can't discuss it because it's still under investigation. I had my deputy director call the Office of Inspector General last week or so ago to get the status of the investigation. We were told that the investigation is on hold until which time the trial that is set for June, as you mentioned, takes place. I don't control the investigation. That is up to Inspector General Horowitz. You'd have to discuss it with him. So it'd be inappropriate for me to talk about anything regarding that other than what I've said already.
I understand that there will be things that could be used in court about the prosecution of the two guards that can't be discussed here. I don't understand why you wouldn't be able to explain to us what we know about the security footage. What particularly is missing, and how did that happen? These guards aren't being investigated for anything related to their destruction of evidence, as far as I'm aware. So I get that there's an investigation that does touch on a prosecution of two individuals, but many more systemic things went wrong than just the things these two guards are being charged with. And so a year and a half into the investigation, we don't have anything to publicly say to the taxpayers or to these victims yet?
Senator, here's what I would say to that is, again, I can't speak about something that is under investigation. Here's what I will commit to, that after that investigation is over, and all of these things have been appropriately done, I will absolutely follow up with you on anything regarding what we could do better or different. I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to get into any of that right now because there's even a chance. So it's under litigation. I've been advised not to speak about it, but not because I don't want to, because it's not appropriate right now.
Okay, we will definitely keep you to your word on the pledge for the after action when this trial is over. Can you explain what processes have changed with regard to high value targets? There are things you've surely learned that we would want to be implementing to make sure that other high-value targets, obviously every human life is equal in dignity in the eyes of God, but for the purposes of investigation of co-conspirators, we care more about keeping certain prisoners alive because they're necessary to be evidence and testimony in other cases. What processes have we changed to make sure other high-value targets are not able to commit suicide in a situation like this?
Well, again, Senator, without getting into specifics, which I don't think would be appropriate in this forum, I will say that we treat people as appropriate for their security needs. First of all, whether or not someone's valuable to a case or whatever is irrelevant to us. That's someone's job to do. We treat everyone's life of value. We're going to apply the appropriate security. So again, it's something that I don't think is appropriate to speak about now, but I certainly will follow up with you at which point I can and have that discussion with you.
I've given you credit for being forthright up to this point, but I don't think the answer you just gave aligns with where you started. I think you acknowledged at the beginning that certain prisoners are more important for the purposes of public trust and for other public investigations and other prosecutions that are happening. Ms. Maxwell, Mr. Epstein's chief of staff or co-conspirator, whatever we want to call her, she is of greater value to public trust than the median inmate in a facility today. So are you telling me that there's nothing additional that's being done to make sure that she can't commit suicide relative to just the median prisoner in any of your facilities?
We apply appropriate security. You asked me a question earlier, what have you learned? Again, without getting into specifics, Senator, the answer is we learned lessons from that and we have made adjustments. It's just not appropriate for me to discuss them. But not for the investigative reasons or whatever. We assess the security and the needs of someone who comes in. You use the word high value, special security needs, whatever. We are going to apply the appropriate security that we think we need to do to protect that individual, protect the staff, protect everyone. And we do that individually assessing these cases.
I've got more I'd like to discuss with you about this, but the chairman gets the gavel back, so I'll follow up offline. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator Sasse. Senator Ossoff, I believe, is by remote. Are you with us, Senator?